Hello and welcome to today's show. I am the Blind Samurai, Brain Kadien, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I'm really excited about today's podcast. Today's podcast, I would say, is a road podcast or a road trip podcast, as we are sitting here in the 721 Ministry studio with my dear friend and co-host, Mr. Sam Hunter. Hello, Sam. How are you?
I'm great, Brian. I call you BK. So BK, I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm glad you came over to the studio. Even though you can't take it all in, it's a cold day outside. It's raining. We got a fire going, and it'll just be nice to sit here and chat with you.
Yeah, we're doing a little video today.
You got it on video because we got this camera system set up. So we'll let everybody see what the Blind Samurai looks like, along with listening to him.
Well, that's really cool. Well, what I want to do to start off today is, to let the listeners get to know you a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind starting off by giving them a little bit of your background, who you are,
Okay.
where what you've been doing, throughout your amazing life, and what got you to where you are today.
Okay, thank you. I'm a Southerner. If you can tell by my voice, I was born in Sumter, South Carolina, raised there with great family, great parents, all three sisters. Played a lot of sports. Moved up to Greenville 40 years ago. My background was always something about structural engineering or construction or development. I did some subdivision development. Did all that in some form or fashion of construction on a pretty small basis. 21 years ago, I shut down my business and started doing this men's ministry because I could look all around me and see that men were just missing it. They just weren't living the life that and they didn't even know it. Nobody was telling them. But before we get to more of that, I have a daughter who is 36 with two granddaughters. I married Dina 10 years ago. She has 3 children. We have worked this thing out pretty well together. And as you know, I'm in Greenville, Columbia, and Charleston. And, I'm passionate about fitness. I'm passionate about mindfulness and being purposeful about life. And I'm passionate about Jesus, which is my worldview. So I try to live my life with all my faults and with all my frailties. I try to live my life as purposefully as I can, as passionately as I can, so that I don't leave anything on the table. Mm. So I'm 68 years old, still doing pretty good from a fitness standpoint, and just looking to always continue to grow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you, I think one of the words you just used was, things you said was living a purposeful life. Mm-hmm. And with that, I'm going to ask you one of today's $1 million questions. And because you are episode 2 of a series about men's mindfulness, and the reason that, I wanted to get together with you is because of your background and your role and in letting spirituality play a big part in your life, mm-hmm. and helping others to realize that. And, how would you define or describe what mindfulness is to you?
That is a great question. And I'll start off by defining what it's not. And I'll start that way because that's what I see all around me. Most everybody I see in this busy culture in which we live is not living a mindful life. They're not thinking through what's most important in life. And for instance, I'm gonna do a thing this Friday down in Charleston. The first question I'm going to ask the men in this group is, list your top 3 priorities. List your top 3 priorities. And I know, having done this before, that they're going to say, well, it's God, it's my wife, and it's family, and then work. Or maybe they'll say God, family, work. Some agree on that. And so my follow-up question will be, okay, well, if I followed you around this past week, and I could see where your thoughts and your focus were, as well as your actions, how would they line up with those priorities? Mm. So if I were to ask anybody in the audience, what are your top 3 priorities? I'd probably get a similar answer. I'd get whatever it was. The challenge would be, do you really live that out? Mm. And for most part, the answer is no, they don't, because they're not living mindfully. They're living mindlessly. They're getting through the day. They have filled in so many distractions in the times that they could be thinking, or just letting their brain relax. Sometimes I can find myself guilty of this or find myself subject to this, driving down the interstate, headed to Columbia or Charleston, and I've got the radio going, or I'm listening to YouTube music, Earth, Wind, and Fire, or the Eagles, or some of my Chicago, some of my favorite bands, and then I'll turn it off, and I'll go, oh, the silence is so nice. Why wasn't I doing this for the last 30 minutes? Why, as much as I love the music, why wasn't I just driving silently? So mindfulness, I think, is being purposeful about what it is you want to do each day, being thoughtful. And that doesn't mean you're rigid. It just means that you just don't want to waste every day. You're trying to think through what's most important.
Yeah.
Can I share a quick story with you?
I'd love to.
So a friend of mine told me the story that a rabbi was walking through Israel. This is a long time ago. It's back when the Romans had occupied it, and maybe he was leaving the temple, and he was deep in thought, and it got to be dusk, and he came to a fork, and without thinking about it, he took the wrong fork. And he's walking along, and suddenly he hears this booming voice, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And he's startled. And then it comes again, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And he steps back and he realizes that he's run into a Roman outpost. So he sits there and thinks for a minute, and then, as any rabbi does, he answers a question with a question. And he said, "Roman guard, how much do you get paid a day?" And the Roman guard is thinking, what is he asking me this for? And he yells out, "1 denario a day, Jew. What is that to you?" And the rabbi says, and this is why I bring the story up about mindfulness, he said, "I'll double your pay if you'll come to my house every morning and ask me those same 2 questions. Who are you? What are you doing here?" Yeah. If I had somebody by my car that stopped me before I got in the car, distracted, all the list of things I got to do that day, and they said, wait a minute, Sam, who are you? Yeah. What are you doing here? That's mindfulness.
Yeah.
That's mindfulness, BK.
No, I love it. And, we've had a chance. I mean, I met you, just a little background, about how we met. I was working at Stretch Lab back in 2020, just after we got back from the little break of COVID. And I met you, it was right about September of 2020. And at the time that I met you, I was going into the darkness. Right. I was just losing, really getting used to losing my eyesight. It was before the emergency surgeries, and you came in and we did some work, I think, on your shoulder. And I mean, the whole point of this is that every week, most every week since then, we've spent at least an hour together.
That's true.
I think there's only been maybe 6 weeks or 7 weeks in 4 or 5 years where I haven't been able to spend time with you for at least an hour each week.
I hadn't thought about it. You're right, though.
And also like how, having you not just as a friend and a mentor, but as a client, a Stretch client, as part of what I would say you build into your mindfulness optimization program there, is that we've had some great conversations. And going back to what you were saying and kind of, maybe referencing that story you just told about, having that ability to kind of like witness what you're doing as you're doing it. I know we've talked about that as part of like a mindful practice is, envisioning ourselves, looking down from above or looking down from a patio and really witnessing what we're doing, when we're with people, when we're speaking with others, or just when we're alone and quiet. Like, what does that look like? What's the vibration of that? So
we have talked about that, and that, you brought that up in one of our stretch sessions, and I remember thinking, God, if I kept that perspective, there are a lot of things I wouldn't do or I wouldn't say. Yeah. And there are a lot of things I would do that I'm not doing. If I had that we could call it a 30-foot perspective, we could call it a 1,000-foot perspective. But if I just panned back and watched myself. Yeah. By the way, let me just throw in a plug. I'm 68. I played every sport there was, way into my adulthood, running, doing many triathlons and all that. And I hurt all over for years. And I've told you this many times, between you and Billy Fletcher over at Alliance. Yeah. Y'all have saved my entire body. Y'all, I am pain-free. You have been the best thing that's happened to me. So if anybody, I know this isn't your purpose, but I'm going to say it anyway. If anybody is listening to me, this guy works magic when it comes to stretching, because he started off and he told me, he said, look, I'm going to, it's kind of a semi-massage as well as a stretch, because you said this, if I don't get you loosened up a little bit, I can't stretch you.
Yeah.
And then our conversations at the same time, I used to have a Lithuanian massage guy, Valdaz, and we had the same kind of conversations.
Yeah.
And so the time we spend together is really helpful for me from a body, mind, and spirit standpoint. And so it's way more than just the excellent stretching that you do. And I know you're not trying to highlight that, but I'm not gonna let that opportunity pass.
No, I appreciate that. And probably, you mentioned Billy Fletcher, owner of Alliance, who, where you train over there, and I do my jiu-jitsu at Alliance as well. I think we're both grateful that we have Billy in our lives. And I think we all kind of share a lot of common beliefs, especially when it comes to, optimizing our lives physically, mentally, and spiritually. I know for me, that I have my 5 mountains of mindfulness, sleep, hydration, nutrition, exercise, and then prayer, stillness, or meditation.
Yes.
And I think, you again are a great example of, using, those 5 daily practices and foundations or values in your life. And along with stretching, just, to kind of let the listeners know, I'm going to throw this back at you. Yeah. For a 68-year-old man, what a beast you are. Why don't you talk about some of the other things that you do to stay tip-top Magoo?
Well,
let's go into that.
All right. So, this all evolved over the last 3 to 5 years, but the first thing I did was I realized that fasting was so important. Okay. So I started not eating on Mondays ever. I don't eat on Monday. From Sunday night to Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, I don't eat at all. Then I jumped into the intermittent fasting, and I choose to eat from 10 to 6. That's the only time I eat, 10 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon. And then I don't eat outside of that. That has done wonderful things for me. I didn't really need to lose weight, but you do lose weight doing it that way.
Yeah.
But the fasting on Monday resets my body as well as my mind, because it's just a different kind of way to spend the day. And I've been doing it so long now that it's not a struggle for me, but it would be for someone else when they just get started. So you got the fasting side of it. Billy brings you in. I go in with Billy 30 minutes a week, because if you are not doing something about your muscle system, resistance training, then you're dying. Okay. And your body's falling apart. And even at 35, but certainly as years go by.
And which is more than just, your musculature, it also falls into improving bone density as well.
It has everything to do with bone density. Yeah. So then, all right. So then, as you know, the last thing I've been doing a sauna for a long time, and scientifically, doing saunas has been proven to improve your metabolic health, your cardio health, everything. It's a 40% improvement in longevity as well as quality of longevity. But the thing that you and I have been experienced is the cold plunging.
Yeah.
And about 2 years ago, I heard this guy say, look, we're such wimps in our modern day society. We can't even take a cold shower.
Yeah.
So I said, well, okay, I'm not going to be a wimp, so I'll take cold showers. Well, cold showers are miserable, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But the next thing I started reading about was cold plunges, and went downtown to Drift and started doing their cold plunge once a week, and then realized I could buy my own unit, set it up in my own house. So I have a cold plunge that I get in every day for 6 minutes. It's 48 degrees. And I did it this morning before I went to the meeting. And I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually have gotten to where I actually enjoy doing it. It's not just getting it done or how good it is for you and all the science that shows how good it is for you. But the cold plunge itself, I just really enjoy. And then I come out of it with all kind of energy. So I'm doing all these things, as well as cardio, working out on the scent trainer and stretching and all those. Look, I don't want my body to break down on me and my mind to stay strong. And I don't want my mind to break down on me and my body to stay strong. I want to keep the whole thing moving, because I look around and I see a whole bunch of people that they're out of shape. They're distracted. They're busy. They're harried. They're hurried. And I don't want to live that way.
Yeah. So you use, these physical and mental practices in order to help you live a mindful life. And the other part of the question I wanted to ask you is, so how do you take the concept of spirituality or a daily spiritual practice and put that and line that up with how that can help you or others lead a more mindful life.
And we'll start with, and Billy Fletcher starts with his 5 pillars. He talks about the same type of things, and he always talks about some type of meditation. At a very minimum, we all need time to let our brains just relax. So getting up first thing in the morning and hitting that cell phone is not a healthy thing to do, not for your brain at all. Getting up and turning on the TV first thing is not a healthy thing to do. To give yourself some time to be quiet in the morning is essential. But here's what I'd say is behind all that, BK. We all know there's more. Yes, and that's the book we just published, and that's the way I tap out of every one of our podcasts, 721 Live. We all know there's more. We just don't know what the more is, but we know there's something we're missing. And the only reason a person that doesn't know that is because they're so busy, they're so harried that they won't even allow themselves to, they suppress it. But when you start a conversation with someone and all I have to say is, there's more. And then that little inner voice inside tells them, yes, there's more. Do you know that there's never been a civilization in the history of mankind that didn't worship something? Mm-hmm. It might have been a tree, it might have been a cow, it might have been a post, it might have been a stone, but we all have an inherent need to connect with something outside of ourselves. Yeah. Now, for me, that's Jesus, and I won't ram that down anybody's throat, but the mindfulness, the meditation, the prayer, the quietness, the centering yourself, that's an essential to living a life full of wellness and mindfulness.
Well, in from what I understand, what you do with your men's groups, your 721 Ministries men's groups, I'm assuming that some of the things and a lot of the things you're saying right now end up being conversation topics, for people in your group. And what would you say, like right now, are like some of the topics that you focus on, or some of the challenges that you've learned that the men in your group have to focus and deal with on a daily basis?
Well, we talk often about busyness, and we set it up with 3 V's. 3 V's: busyness, the victim, the villain, and the victory. The victim is the one who is so overwhelmed with all the distractions going on in life. We have a sort of a saying that Satan says, and some people believe in Satan, some don't. It doesn't matter. Just think about whatever force is working against you. Says, look, if you can't make them bad, make them busy. So we talk about busyness, and I sat down with a group of men down in Florida. It was a men's discipleship conference. It was a pretty small conference. We were sitting around this big conference table, and they were putting up all this stuff on these different whiteboards, all good techniques about men's ministry and how to reach men and how to grow men and all that. And I raised my hand about 2 hours into it, and I said, this is all really good stuff. None of it's going to matter if we don't address busyness, because every man we know is completely wired out with getting up in the morning, getting it done, doing all the little things he wants to do, coming home, children, wife. They're so busy, so distracted, they can't focus on what's really important. So we talk to the men about busyness because you're not going to get anywhere if you don't start getting a hold of busyness. We talk about body, mind, and spirit. And I know you and I would agree that they all 3 have to be in balance. If your body's out of whack, your mind's going to be out of whack. If your mind's out of whack, your spiritual life's going to be out of whack. If your spiritual life's out of whack, you're probably going to be out of whack mind and maybe even body. So we talk about the focus of your body, mind, and spirit. And then we just talk about where are you going to find that more. Yeah. We talk about there's more. Where are you going to find it?
Well, yeah. And from what I take away from what you just said is that, it helps, you're helping people build inner strength.
Yeah.
And, and just a quick sidetrack on, again, who you are in my life. And we've had some very deep conversations, and I've shared a lot of important moments in my life with you, and I know you have as well with me. And I was recently, as you know, in the hospital over Christmas, having some heart surgery. And I remember, the day that was my surgery was Christmas Eve. I was And I was at one of my most vulnerable moments again
Yeah.
in my life,
Yeah.
faced with, looking at the fear wolf.
Yeah.
And I had to make a decision on the type of surgery, that I could have. I could have done medication. I could have done like a shock treatment, or I could go and have the full, operation where they, the heart ablation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was scared.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm in the ER room, and it's Christmas Eve, and I didn't know how to get advice on it. I knew if I was going to be talking to anyone in my family, as much as I love them, it was going to be kind of a clunky, unknown conversation. Yeah. And I remember I just popped into my mind, especially because I know you went through, had a situation with your heart last year.
Right.
And I go call Sam. And, it's this most vulnerable moment another vulnerable moment of my life. I picked up the phone, I called you, and, I've told you this before, what peacefulness and resolve that brought to me at that moment. I was able to talk to you about what was happening, and then also to speak to your lovely wife, Dina, who is a doctor.
Right.
And just listening to you guys and accepting your advice, and you listening to me just meant the world to me in a moment where I needed that. And, where I wanted to go with that is that, in what you do working with others, how important is it to encourage people to allow themselves to become vulnerable, especially for the guys?
Oh, how important is it? Is there anything more important?
Yeah.
Or maybe does anything help open the door to growth and healing and advancement than being transparent? What good is it to hide all this behind that facade we all hide behind? Yeah, I had a friend that said, talking about men, and of course mine's men's ministries, but ladies, we're not excluding you in this conversation by any stretch, because ladies, we're all humans. We are just little boys hiding behind a grown-up facade, and ladies, you're just little girls hiding behind a grown-up facade, and we have these hurts, and we have these fears, and we don't want people to see the real me. Yeah. And that just keeps us trapped in a prison. One of the things I do in these men's groups, which most preachers cannot do. See, I'm not a preacher. Thank goodness I'm not a preacher, because I'm not confined by that. Yeah. Most preachers cannot get up in the pulpit on Sunday morning and be transparent about the things where they failed, or where they skinned their knees, where they've done something wrong, where they didn't do it the way they really wanted to do it, looking back, whatever. I can do that, because what good is it for these men to listen, for us to interact, if they don't know where I'm coming from, that I'm just like them? So transparency and vulnerability, even though men are trained. You were an athlete coming out of high school and in college. Yep. You're a tough guy. My gosh, I wouldn't want to get on the mat with you. Yeah. But you're willing to say, hey, I was scared to death. I was vulnerable. I didn't know what to do. If men would do that with their wives. Yeah. Now, if you're a wife and you're listening, you're probably going, oh, if he would only open up. Yeah. If men would do that, if ladies would do it, ladies do it more naturally than men do. Yeah. And they do it with each other more naturally than men. Men close themselves off. They don't want to show any vulnerability. We've been trained since childhood to get it done, to power through it. The no pain, no gain, yep. That only the strong survive. All that's been just drilled into our minds, and so we take that into adulthood. And
to do all that without asking for help.
Without asking for help.
Without asking for help. Yeah.
Without asking for help. Yeah. Asking for help. And when you ask for help, the other person is blessed by the fact that you reached out and asked for help. Yeah. And I'll tell you something else that I learned a long time ago, and this is not a manipulative thing, it's just something to think about. If you're crossways with somebody, if your relationship has gotten upside down in some manner or fashion, if you were to reach out and ask them for help, that starts the road to healing, because you've expressed vulnerability. Yeah. You've expressed transparency. Okay. So this hiding behind how great I am and how I got life, I got everything under control and I'm just killing it and living the dream and all these things we hear people saying, what's the use in that? That's just, I've had a couple of friends who took that approach to life. I mean, you see them and they say, I'm top of the world. I'm as good as I've ever been in my life. One of them committed suicide. Yeah. Another one had to check himself into a mental hospital. It doesn't help us to put that facade out there.
No, I mean, being authentic, um, and I think we have talked about some of our daily practices, whether it's cold plunge or, training or jujitsu or, some of the other things that we do to keep ourselves in check. It's that a lot of them are kind of examples of acute stress. We're putting a little, controlled pressure on ourselves, allowing ourselves, I mean, jumping in cold water, what you've done like 10, 12 minutes, you're physically vulnerable.
Yes.
You're mentally vulnerable.
Yes.
You're spiritually vulnerable because you're praying to God for
That's
it
right.
to end.
That's right.
So, doing little things like that too, I think, I know it's helped me, and I think it's helped you too. And just being able to express, yourself well in moments of vulnerability and ask for help too.
This is a physiological fact. There's a place in your brain that registers when you do something hard. And it remembers it. It actually grows a little bit in a good way. And so the next time you come upon something hard in life, your brain says you can do it. Now, that same part of the brain registers when you don't do it, when you shirk away from it. And so the more you face an obstacle and say, I'm gonna do this. And little things like cold plunging and those type of things, they do set you up for that. Can I share another story with you?
Love it to.
So I was at this training thing, and they took us into this big room. And we'd been in this big room for 3 days. They took us all out. They blindfolded us, and they had told us they were going to set up a ropes course inside this big room. Now, ropes not being that you walk on them, ropes that are at waist level. And they said, all right, now we're going to take you in one by one, and we're going to put your hand on one of the ropes, and your job is to find your way out. There were about 25 of us. Now they said, now this is not a competition. It doesn't matter who gets out first. The real key is to find your way out. And they said, now if you get confused or if you have any questions, raise your hand, and one of the counselors will come over, and they'll answer whatever you have, whatever question you have. So they set us in there, and I'd already made a mental picture of the rooms. I knew where the doors were when I went in the first time. They put you on the rope. You start working your way around the rope. You start moving, and you're blindfolded. You can't see anything. And you bump into people. You have to duck under people, and all this. And about 8 minutes into it, the head man says, "Julia's found the way out," and everybody starts clapping. Well, you know what happens to Sam? The competition kicks in. Sam, I thought we weren't going to clap for people that found their way out first.
Yeah.
So we go on, and an hour goes by. Now, in the middle of that hour, I raised my hand. One of the counselors comes over, and he said, "What do you need from me? What do you want? I said, "I need for you to go ahead and tell me this is some kind of exercise, that there is no way out. So just fess up so I can be done with this nonsense." And he said, "That's not what you need. What do you need? That's what you want." I said, "I want you to stop this double talk." He said, "No, that's what you want. What do you need?" I said, "No, forget it." So I started back in. Everybody got out but Sam. When I find the purpose of the exercise, BK, was to say the way they got out was they asked for help. When the counselor said, "What do you need?" they said, "I need help." That's how you got out.
Yeah.
You didn't find a door. That's how you got out.
Yeah.
Sam is not going to ask for help. Sam's going to figure it out, see? So the exercise has stayed. That was 10 years ago. The exercise has stayed with me. Ask for help.
Yeah.
Let somebody help you.
That's a pretty powerful story and message that goes along with it. And, over the years, I've always enjoyed listening to, a lot of your life experiences and the stories about them. And I think that's a great lead into you, if you wanted to share about what I would say, based on what you've told me, is one of your more mindful experiences when you went to the silent retreat at Monk's Abbey in Greenville, or down towards the coast, or down the lowlands of South Carolina.
Yes.
Would you care to share a little bit about
it? Was Mepkin Abbey in Monk's Corner, and it's set in this huge plantation, pre-Civil War plantation, along one of the rivers that flows down to Charleston. It's probably about, mileage-wise, no more than 35 miles outside of Charleston, but to get there it takes an hour and a half. And
is that on the Santee?
It's not I don't know what river it is, but it's in the middle of nowhere. But I had, for another 2 or 3 years, I had tried to practice silence and solitude. I would sit up on my back deck in the morning for 2 hours, and just with nothing, but just me in the chair for 2 hours. And I would try to let my mind float and just let it expand and be quiet. And so I already had a little bit of that as a practice.
And this is one of my favorite stories, by the way. So I hope you can tell it as well as when you told it to me for the first time.
Well, so I decide, you know what? I'm going to try this at an extended base, just like cold plunging, just like Billy, just like stretching, anything. I want to try something new to see how I do at it and see what it does for me. So I signed up for this. You go in Monday, you come out Friday. You could choose to talk if you wanted to, but if you didn't want to do it, and I wanted to do the full Monty, no talking, you wear a blue lantern badge kind of thing, and so people know not to talk to you. Yeah. There's probably 15 or 20 other people. You have your own room. It's a very nice setting. I got there Monday afternoon. By Monday night, it gets dark at 5:30. It's February a couple of years ago. I'm thinking, what am I going to do for the next 4 days? I can't. This is crazy. I've lost my mind. So what did I have to do? I had to breathe deeply, take it all in. Earlier that day, the head monk had come over and sat down and had a little orientation, and then he gave us a tour. Well, we had to walk behind the monk. The monk walked about a mile an hour.
Well, and also too, right? You have your phone, but like, what are some of the guidelines?
Yeah, so nobody's going to tell you cannot use your phone.
You can even leave if you wanted to, right?
Right. You could leave. People got in their car and drove off to maybe run to the store and get something. I decided that I was going to follow the monk's practice for the whole week. So left my cell phone in my car. Did not go out and get it the whole week. I told all of my loved ones, here's the number at the central line. If you need me, it better, if it's an emergency. But other than that, don't call me because I will not have my cell phone. Okay. Other people had their cell phone. Other people talked with each other. Other people got in the car to leave and go out maybe and get a hamburger or something. Because the meal structure was this: 5 o'clock in the morning. And all you got at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was 5 in the morning to 5:20. So you had a short window in there to catch it. And it was boiled eggs, cereal, toast. Wasn't exactly the kind of meal I'd like to start my day with. Then lunch is from 12 to 12:25, and it's not much more. And there's a hot casserole of some sort, and then you got the bread, and you got some cereal, and you got some soup. All right, and then dinner is 5 o'clock to 5:15, and it's nothing. I remember the first day I walked into dinner, and I thought I saw ketchup and mayonnaise and cheese, and I thought we're having hot dogs. Well, that was it. Yeah. You could have a ketchup and cheese sandwich. That was dinner. Yeah. So I decided to stick to that. So you get up at 5 to get your breakfast, and you're done at 5:15, and it's dark. What you gonna do? Yeah. All right, now you got all day. You got to be mindful of that 12 to 12:15 window, else you'll miss eating, which ain't gonna kill me. But then you got that 5 to 5:15. So you come out of the 5:15 dinner, and it's starting to get dark. It's a long time before you're gonna go to sleep. What are you gonna do? The monk had walked us around.
And there's no TV.
There's no TV.
No music.
You could bring music if you wanted it, but you can't let anybody else hear it. Yeah. I got no music. I got nothing.
Got nothing.
And I realized, Brian, that I was distracted by the lack of distractions. I was distracted by the lack of distractions. And for the first 2 days, I had an overwhelming sense of anxiety. Wow. I couldn't get my pace down inside. I couldn't calm down. I was really agitated by the fact that I didn't have any distractions. And then it hit me and I was also, during the day, I found a very peaceful place. I'd take some books, I'd take the Bible, and I'd read and I'd talk and I'd pray all to myself and with with the Lord and all that. And then I would go for like a 4-mile walk at a fast pace, because walking at a slow pace isn't as good as walking at a fast pace, right? 4 miles. I realized that in itself was messing up the whole karma of the thing, my whole sensitivity of the thing. And it hit me, walk like the monk walks. Now, the monk puts his arms behind his back when he walks. He leans over a little bit, and he walks about 1 mile an hour. So instead of walking 4 miles at a 16-minute pace to get a good clip in for cardio, which, that's where we're wired. That's where we're wired, right? Yeah. I realized that, no, not this week. Yeah. Walk like the monk walks. To this day, if you were to see me walking that way, you can know that I'm de-stressing myself by doing that. I'm slowing myself down to walk like the monk walks. So from then on, I walked like the monk walked. Everywhere I went, I leaned over, I put my arms behind my back, and I just slowly walked. Everything started to calm down. And as I would walk where I had already walked at a 16-minute clip, now I'm seeing things I didn't see before.
Yeah.
Now I'm hearing things I didn't hear before. And I'm realizing the purpose of all of this is to and I'm a pretty laid back guy to start with. I'm blessed that I don't have I work out of my home. I have these men's groups. I'm not in that rock'em sock'em world. I still was so keyed up that it took me 2 days to get down to where I could breathe and relax. And from that point forward, it was so easy, and it was so wonderful to have that quietness. And I wasn't dying to turn on a TV, get out there and turn the radio on. I had finally gotten to where I could, and my takeaway was walk like the monks walk.
Yeah. What a great, experience and a great example of like kind of a little mindfulness vacation, so to speak, if you want to call it a vacation. But also too, you were kind of like you didn't get to that place and then it was perfect. Like I think you had said right up until the end, even like going into the last day or so, you really had to stay present and you had to keep that focus in order to not get distracted, and
it kept coming
to
back.
Finish, like you said, to finish what you started. To go get the complete experience from the beginning of the week right till the end of the week.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because Friday morning you can leave. Thursday, once I'd gotten through the day, I thought, well, just go. Yeah. Dina was flying out of town the next day, so I wasn't going to see her Friday, and I hadn't seen her all week. And I thought, why not just scoot on out Thursday night right before they close the gates at 7? What's the difference?
Right.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
I'll get to see Dina before she leaves. And then this voice kicked in and said, no, see it through. See it through. You'll see her on Sunday. See it through. And but thank you for reminding me. It took me right up, all the way up to the end. Yeah. That rush kept coming back in. That hurry kept coming back in. One of my favorite authors, Dallas Willard, says we must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from our lives. And that hurry kept coming back in. Yeah. And I'd have to. It's like whack-a-mole. I had to just whack it back. I had to tamp it back and walk like the monk. So yeah, it was an unbelievable experience to realize how distracted I was by the lack of distractions.
Well, and just your ability, like I know we've talked about this before, how like when, whether we're training or, we're in the cold plunge, about, that sticking with it, like finish what you started, don't give in, don't take the easy way out. And, and that's why I love that story, because there was no easy way unless you allowed yourself to open up and understand what was really going on, right? And being able to look inward and listen to yourself and really feel the moment,
which was not easy. Yeah. That was not easy. And as I said, I'm a pretty laid back guy when it comes to my schedule, but that was not easy. And I've talked with several people since then who I would have considered to be the type of person who say, man, I'd be all over that. I'm going to do that next week. And instead they go, I couldn't do that. Yeah. I couldn't do it. And I would say, well, you mean you couldn't go 4 days without talking to somebody and staying silent within yourself? And no, I couldn't do it.
Well, yeah, that's again one of my, I always love hearing that story. And and if we got some time too, there's another story I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing with the listeners, and that was last fall, amidst all the turmoil in Israel, that you took a trip.
Yes.
And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about that trip with us.
And it was another. Now, anybody listening or watching, because we are recording this on video, by the way. I don't want you to think that I got it all together and that I'm some superhuman or anything like that. I'm not. I'm just a regular person. Really am. I just like to take these challenges and say, okay, I'm going to do that, even if I don't really want to do it. If I think there's some purpose to it, I think I can grow through it or from it, I'm going to do it. And so a year ago, I'd made friends a couple of years ago with a rabbi in Mount Pleasant, right outside of Charleston, Yossi. And he'd sent out an email after the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack into Israel, that summer, this was October 7th of 2023, that summer of 2024, he was going to lead a group over there of Jews from Mount Pleasant in a solidarity trip. Because at that point, Israel was in a flat-out war zone. And they were going over to help with the crops, to help with food, to help with victims and all that, just a solidarity trip. But that didn't work out. But as soon as I saw it, I said, Dina, you mind if I go? I'm not a Jew. I'm a Christian, but you mind if I go? She said, I think that's very important that you go. So I reached out to Yossi, Rabbi, and he said, yeah, come on. So they canceled the summer trip. They pulled it around for the first week in December. I'd had a heart attack 3 weeks before. It was not a good time to go to Israel for me. The cardiologist said, go, you're fine. It's not going to hurt anything. But it was much better. It would have been much better from a timing standpoint just to lay back and, not to take that kind of 12-hour flight over there, the stress of being in Israel. But I felt this voice, and I'd say the Lord speaking into my heart saying, this is important. Go.
Well, I remember we were kind of like kidding around, and we were talking before you left too, and about you had contact with some people with boots on the ground over there, right. And they were explaining to you that it's relatively safe, and you're going to be okay. And I remember being like, well, I think their version of safe is a lot more different than what we're used to. We just kind of giggled about
We laughed and I told all those guys that I travel with, all my Jewish friends, I said, my friend BK, he said, look, y'all's definition of safe is the building over there blew up, our building didn't blow up.
Yeah.
We're safe.
Yeah.
Because I did reach out to a former military friend of mine over in Israel, and he said, you're safe, you're fine. Well, I went over there flew out on a Sunday, landed on a Monday morning. We flew out the following Tuesday morning. So we're on the ground 8 days. Israel is in a war zone. I was shocked. I did not know, living over in my comfortable Greenville, South Carolina home, they are on a flat out war zone, and there are no tourists. I've been over there before, and where there are tourist buses everywhere. People from all over the world, Catholics from all over the world, Christians from all over the world, Jews from all over the world, Muslims from all over the world. I mean, Jerusalem and Israel itself is a fascinating place. There was nobody there. But we actually went down to what they call the Gaza envelope, which is the Israel area just adjacent to Gaza, where all the fighting had been. And artillery was shaking the ground. They told us, they said, now, wherever we were there all day and into the night, they said, now, if you hear a siren, you've got 15 seconds to get to a bomb shelter. And a few times they'd say, but there are no bomb shelters around here, so just flatten out if you hear a siren. And then they would say, but you don't have to worry, there's not going to be any sirens. Hamas doesn't have any more missiles they can send over. We've taken away that capacity. And one of the people in our group said, well, when was the last time you heard a siren? This was on a Wednesday. When was the last time you heard a siren? Friday. So it was not cut and dry that we were safe. It was not that, you couldn't just say everything is fine, but everywhere we went, the people that we met with, be they officials, be they just citizens who had experienced the trauma, had lost loved ones, had seen people's heads cut off, had experienced this unbelievable horror, they would say, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. They would say this to the Jewish men and women that I was with. And we feel so alone. We just thank you for coming and showing us that you care. And then I would step over afterwards and I'd say, now, I'm the only Christian in this group, and I want you to know we care too. And the expressions on their face would just like melt you. They'd say, oh, thank you. And they'd grab me and hug me. So it was a trip with 14 other Jewish friends. I didn't know any of them before I went, other than the rabbi. But I experienced 8 days and 8 nights with those people. They became good friends of mine. I experienced their Jewish rituals, the way they handle meals, the way they would sing together, the way they would wear the kippah that they put on top of their head, the yarmulke. They everything they did, that was an experience in and of itself. Then being with the victims of the Hamas attack, being with the military, being with the leaders. It was one of the hardest things I've done that I can remember, honestly, BK. It was emotionally draining.
You said that.
I got into 2 days, after 2 days, and knowing that I've got, 2 days means it's Tuesday night, I'm not flying out till the following Tuesday. I remember thinking, this is too much.
Yeah.
This is too much. Rabbi Yossi he scheduled this thing too long. I can't handle this.
Wow.
But I knew I had to. I was in Israel. What am I going to do? Just like I'm going to walk like the monks walk in another way. So I just took a deep breath and said, you're here. Father, Heavenly Father, show me what you want me to learn. Let me be a part of this. Let me be present during this next 6. Don't let me just while it away or try to just grit my way through it. And so one of the hardest weeks I've had in my life emotionally and somewhat physically, but emotionally, it turned out to be one of those growth experiences where you come back and you say, well, I really wouldn't want to do it again, but I would not want to have missed that for the world.
Yeah.
It was yet one more thing that I just look at and say, that's hard. I don't want to do it. I think it'll be beneficial. I'm going to do it.
Well, and that, maybe kind of folds into, another important aspect of living a mindful life is being grateful and thankful for what we have. I think about that. Like I can go, as a blind person, I can go downtown in Greenville and I can go take a yoga class and I can stand outside and listen and wait for an Uber and with freedom and without worry, that there's going to be something like a bomb going off.
Mm-hmm.
And just, again, being grateful for what we have.
Gratitude is the miracle drug. It really is. It's impossible to be nitpicking, to be critical, to be negative when you just practice gratitude. Mm-hmm. Now, you know something, Brian, that has made a huge impression on me is the way you have tackled this blindness in your life. I mean, who wants to deal with that? Who wants to have to? But you have not let it. Now, you did open up to me and tell me what a dark, scary time it was and can be even now.
Yep.
But man, you have not let this thing knock you back, and your zest for life is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this with you. You just keep moving forward with this type of challenge. You're just not going to let it hold you back.
No, and I'm grateful. I have a lot of great role models and examples in my life, and you're one. I'm going to put this back at you, and you're one of them. And I know you've got a busy schedule today. So before we wrap up, a couple things I want to do is, first of all, acknowledge how grateful I am for you to be in my life. And I'm so thankful for your friendship. I'm so thankful for your support of me. I mean, it just means so much to me. And, and I also want to acknowledge what you do for others in the Greenville community and in really throughout South Carolina, including Columbia and Charleston, all the way to Charleston. So, thank you very much for that. If the listeners or others get a chance to listen to this and they want to learn more about you or follow you, how can they find you? Do you have, are you on social media? Do you have a website? What's the best way for people?
So we have a website, 721ministries.org, 721ministries.org. And from there, you'll find another website, but you just go to that first one, 721ministries.org. We are on all the YouTube. You'll find us at 721 Live. If you were just to put in your search, Sam Hunter, 721 Ministries, our videos are going to pop up. Our podcast is going to pop up. We've got several different podcasts going, so they can find us just by clicking 721 Sam Hunter, 721 Live Sam Hunter, 721 Ministries Sam Hunter. But before we finish up, thank you for saying that. The reason I do what I do was 21 years ago, I shut down my business and started doing this is because men aren't paying attention. And ladies, I know that you have your own challenges, and you're raising children, you're working inside the house, outside the home, all those things. I happen to do a men's ministry, and men aren't paying attention. And I wanted them to see, and our calling card has always been, there's more. Yeah. If I can just get you to slow down and realize there's more, then there's more will take care of itself. Yeah. But I want these men to stop just sleepwalking through life and realize there is so much more to life than this.
Yeah, definitely. And, and I appreciate that share. And, just one more thing before we wrap up is, again, our mission statement for Team Blind Samurai Media is to share conversations and messages of love, hope, and strength in order to help others nourish their physical, mental, and spiritual selves to help lead better lives. And if you could, in your own words, doesn't have to be long, would you mind sending a message of love, hope, and strength to the listeners? And maybe, keeping in mind that there could be someone out there right now that really needs to hear that.
BK, Now, of course, my worldview is Jesus. My worldview is that there is a God. He's not just a God. He can be your heavenly Father. So recently, I've started praying this in public situations. I would say, let's say I'm praying over a couple that are getting married. The husband, the father of the bride has asked me to pray at the reception or whatever, and I'll say, I don't pray that you, speaking to God, that you be present with them. I pray that you know they're present with them. I don't pray that you love them perfectly. I pray that they know already that you love them perfectly. And I don't pray that you exert your power in their lives. I pray that they know that you are there and ready to exert your power in their lives. So the message I would send is that you have a strength you can lean onto and you can lean into. And from my worldview, and I think it's most people recognize there's a higher power. And for me, it's God and Jesus, but he's there. There's someone who loves you perfectly, and he's ready for you just to fall into his arms and say, I can't do it. I need help, which is exactly what we talked earlier. And there's always there. That's always there for you.
Yeah, man, that's a beautiful way to wrap up things for today. Thank you very much for hosting today's Road Trip podcast. And I want you to know I love you to tears, man.
I love you too, bro. So glad you were here.
Yeah.
What a treat. What a joy.
Thank you again.
Yes, sir.